Houston Cougars. A furious comeback to knock off Duke and advance to the national championship game.
Here is Zion Chris, big hole, open sesame. Zion Chris, wow, the 72-yard house call.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to Scott Home Podcast, premium bonus react edition, reacting to a 35-9 victory by your Houston Cougars over the Rice Owls in what is currently the last scheduled Bayou bucket for a while. It was a little slow in getting started. I don't think that's unfair to the Cougars to say. This was a 0-0 and 3-0 game for much longer than you would think based on the final score, but also the last 2.5-ish quarters, and really 4 quarters of defensive effort, then 2.5-ish quarters of all-round effort, I think left absolutely no doubt, Bobby, who is the rightful winner of this game. And even I think with even leaving this game with some doubts or some questions unanswered. Doubts is the wrong word. Questions unanswered about Cougar football. Like, I feel better than I did at about like 10 minutes into the first quarter when we just could not move the ball at all. We didn't see a fully formed offense, but we also still saw, I think, flashes of positivity, of things to build on. What are your initial thoughts after that Bayou bucket win?
Yeah, first initial thought is how good is his defense? That was kind of that seems to be the theme that we are carrying around with this U of H program. I mean, you saw it last year, you're seeing it this year. This defense, oddly enough, is going to be the one carrying this team, which as a proud freshman of that 2007 season, that feels very weird. But yeah, it's really, really good to that was kind of my first initial thought, kind of leaving this game, is how good was this defense?
I mean, it took 7+ quarters for this defense to finally surrender a touchdown. And I don't want to get in debate over whether or not Rice's one touchdown did or didn't come in garbage. I would say no, but I would also say that while this was a close game, while your offense was kind of struggling to get into it, the Cougar defense more than held up its end of the rope, more than they kept you in the game while you were figuring things out offensively. And I think that's really important. I mean, obviously great effort, full stop, taking it entirely into consideration, but even better effort when you consider how long it took the offense to get going. Like, we never expected this to be the case, but we know what happens when the offense doesn't get going in a Bayou bucket game and the defense isn't really up to task. That
I would say we do know that.
We lived it week 2 of 2 years ago. I lived it watching the final sequence of overtime, waiting for Los Angeles Azules to come on in Ontario, California, almost exactly 2 years ago. Great concert, by the way. Like that evening was genuinely one of the better evenings my ex and I had, and just in spite of that era of Houston Cougar football, thankfully that is not the kind of situation in front of us tonight. I think, I gotta start with that defensive effort. I think that's where you gotta dig in on. The Cougars did a really good job setting the tone, kind of like last week. Last week, you kind of got the indicator through the first 2 or 3 SFA possessions that, hey, obviously no guarantee of the future, but this is, these guys came to play. Like, these guys aren't fooled out of the box. I think it would have been a lot. And yeah, Rice did have the field goal drive where they moved it a little bit, but even that drive, like, really wasn't really them breaking off explosive plays. They were finding more room running the ball, but I felt like that at the time, and I think that's why I texted you at the time. It felt more like the defense kind of taking the cumulative toll of just your offense striking out over and over again, and then finally Rice gets out there, gets a little rhythm. But even that drive, like, you stop them fairly well short of the goal. Good tackling, good assignment football. I have no idea how good or not good Rice will be this year. I have my doubts about them, though. I did leave the game. I like their 2 running backs, Dalen Alexander and Quentin Jackson. Like, they inherited some pieces that ended up working decently well for a fairly different system than what they were running. I think it sounds like the linemen worked decently well, though I think U of H won the point of attack pretty emphatically tonight. And those two backs, like I thought those were two solid backs. I think I wouldn't say they're among the best you'll see this year, but I think those two guys in this Rice offense generally is a unique look. We're a good test for your defensive front and your defensive backs. Like this is a very different kind of game than, you know, the likes of Will James and Latrell McCutcheon are probably going to experience this year in terms of how often they're asked to cover and what have you. This is probably the least those guys will be asked to do traditional cornerback stuff in this game, and yet you wouldn't have to dig very hard. I mean, in Will James's case, an interception touchdown. In Latrell McCutcheon's case, constant presence in the run defense, including leading you in both solo tackles and total tackles on this evening. Like you don't have this dominant defensive effort without your defensive backs, chief among them your two primary starting cornerbacks, really taking care of business. And that was my first takeaway here.
Yeah, you know, we said heading into the game in our preview on the main episode that the biggest thing that we were going to need to see is make the tackles, right? You need to get tackles on first contact, and the Cougs did an amazing job on that. Even on the drive in which that first drive where Rice went down and actually managed to get that first field goal, you saw that they just had a little bit of space up the middle there, but you were seeing when Cougs made contact, they brought him down, and you saw that from the DBs, which is always impressive. Anytime you can see the DB setting the edge properly, not even necessarily setting the edge because that's more of a linebacker defensive end kind of thing, but really crashing down, making the tackle, and getting the ball carrier down immediately was spectacular. You saw the interior of this defense. Yes, that drive wasn't their best work, but a lot of this game, you saw Rice running into brick walls and just absolutely being taken down. And the most impressive thing to me, and I brought this up on the regular pod, sometimes you see a big pass play because guys are so concerned. Even when the few times, hold on, let me see here. The few times they dropped back, their quarterback is Chase Jenkins, is showing 12 attempts, right? On those 12 attempts, he didn't have a lot of time, man. He was taken down pretty easily. So overall, the defense did well. You saw everyone stick to their assignments. You didn't. What was Rice's biggest play? Like, I don't know off the top of my head, but it didn't feel like. I think
it was a run by Chase Jenkins, and I'm just saying because I'm looking at the box score, so I know factually it was a 17-yard run, and I want to say that was on their touchdown drive in the fourth quarter. But I could be wrong with that, but that's I think right after he had the big one that was called back rightfully for a hold on his receiver.
Yeah, and so then you look at like their second longest run by Dalen Alexander, 16 yards. This team runs the ball a lot, and they had 177 yards rushing. I'll take it, man. Yeah. That is everything you needed to see from your defense there.
Yeah, 3.3 yards per carry by the Rice rushing attack tonight. Like, no matter the number next, like the total number next to that, irrelevant to me. If you're holding about 3 yards a pop, like that's good, and not letting them have big chunk plays in the pass game, which we didn't really see Rice do in their opener against ULA.
Right.
But that, I think historically, that's kind of what you see option offenses. Like you see him take. I remember Navy wouldn't really throw the ball very much against us, but every so often they'd hit us for a deep shot, and just nothing makes you madder as a fan of a team playing the option. Is that they passed, like they finally fucking passed, and they got a big one, and just it never came close to happening. 3.9 yards per attempt by the Owl quarterbacks, and obviously they weren't throwing it very much, but the times you were tested, passed it with flying colors. Like I think there were some drives where I think you saw maybe a little bit of the cumulative toll of that, but in most of the offenses you will see, if not all, at the very least, most of the offense you'll see in the remaining schedule will be harder than Rice, but they presented a very unique look. Like, will all the subsequent teams in the regular season schedule be more athletic? Yes, probably. But Oregon State, just to use the example of your last non-conference game 2 from now, Oregon State's not going to show a unique run look like the one Rice did. Like, Colorado's a good team. Colorado is way more athletic than Rice. Colorado is not going to show this same kind of look, and they'll present their own unique challenges. But I'm sure Austin Armstrong and the defensive staff did budget time, just knowing that a gun option team like Rice. And I'm sure it helps that you have a head coach in Willie Fritz who, for a long, long time on his teams, from basically the start of his time at Sam Houston through his first few years at Tulane, was running this kind of gun option.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's staff familiarity, but they weren't your opener either.
Yeah.
Like so you didn't. I'm sure they did have some dedicated option time, but I guess my meandering point here is that you did have to prepare at least some for SFA. Like I realize you give truth to SFA doesn't present the same challenges as like UNLV did in last year's opener, but you couldn't just do Rice prep all off season. Like you did have to respect the week one opponent enough, and maybe I would say this week of preparation that gives you faith in the defensive staff that you were able to get this unique look against this opponent who still only has one game of film on them and do as well as the Cougars did.
Yeah, I think more than anything, you just got to be happy that you looked as good as you did, right? And I would say I've had faith in this staff the whole time. I was very excited for them after game one. I thought you looked really good against a fairly good FCS offense, and when it comes to option teams, I think it's really hard to put a lot on coaching because so many things can actually happen on the field with an option team, right? You look at like those games against Navy, things like that. You can tell your guys to maintain integrity, assignment integrity, and to make the tackle. But a lot of times guys just go out there and they play football and they want to make plays, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But a lot of times when it comes to the coaching on that, like, it gets very difficult because there is this idea of I just want to go make a play, and you can't coach exactly what's happening. You can put your guys in the right position, but you can't make it perfect where they don't have any where they're still out there not being football players, right? So overall, yeah, just really exciting, and how you just handled everything, how your players handled that option. It's not an easy thing. Even when you see it every year, it's still a little bit difficult to play and play well against, and the Cougs did it. So tough to not be excited.